Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs and another edition of Studio Albums Ranked. Today we're going to be looking at the catalogue of the great British art rock band Roxy Music. This was a really hard one to do. There really is no such thing as a bad Roxy Music album or even a mediocre one. Every one of these 8 albums is really good. They did 8 albums over the course of about a decade. First album came out in 1972, last album came out in 1982. They started off as very sort of art rocky and like they had a very glam image, but the music wasn't what I would call glam rock. It was very much more what I would call art rock, not progressive, just art rock. Really sort of, well, we'll get into it as we get into the albums, but and then they sort of evolved into a more commercial sound, a very lush sound, a very sophisticated sound. And I feel like all of those different sort of genres that they went through, they did really well. So let's get into it. Obviously, for those of you who aren't aware, the lead singer and main songwriter of Roxy Music is Bryan Ferry. Had a very successful solo career outside of Roxy, often while Roxy was still going. Your main other players were Phil Manzanera on guitar, Andy Mackay on saxophone and oboe. You had Paul Thompson on drums. And then you had other players that came in and out, like for the first couple of albums you had Brian Eno, who was then just known as Eno, doing synthesizers and treatments. He was then replaced by Eddie Jobson, who was very young. I think he was only 18 when he first joined the band. And he was more of a traditional keyboard player, although he could still do those sort of synth treatments, but he also added an extra element to the band by playing sort of electric violin. After that, they used a lot of session players, including Paul Carrick on keyboards at one stage in the late 70s, early 80s. So let's have a look at the 8 albums. Now, the ones that I'm going to have at the bottom, please don't get any idea that I don't like these albums, because I really do. As I said, there is no such thing as a bad or even mediocre Roxy Music album. They're all very good, but I had to put them in some kind of order for the purpose of this show. So this is the order that I've come up with. And my number 8 is going to be their album from 1980, and that is Flesh and Blood. This had some great music on it. The 2 singles off this were really good. Oh Yeah, wonderful song, and Over You, just great. My only minor quibble with this album is that it has a couple of cover versions on it. Now, Bryan Ferry did a lot of cover versions in his solo career, and I love Bryan Ferry's solo stuff, but I don't really want his solo work encroaching on Roxy Music, if you understand what I'm saying. And I feel like that's what happens a little bit on this album with the covers of 8 Miles High and Midnight Hour. They would sound more at home on a Bryan Ferry solo album than a Roxy Music album for me, but that's just me. This album's definitely getting into that sort of smooth, suave, sophisticated kind of sound. Same Old Scene is a really good song. Flesh and Blood, the title track. Rain. It's a really good album. It's just my least favourite Roxy Music album. But as I said, still an album that I really enjoy listening to. As is my number 7, which is their album from 1979, and that is Manifesto. This was a bit of a comeback album for them. They hadn't done an album for about 4 years when this album came out. They'd been on a hiatus. They came back without Eddie Jobson in the band anymore. They were basically down to 4 main members with Brian, Phil, Andy and Paul Thompson. And this album is split into like 2 distinct sort of sides musically. You have the east side and the west side. And the east side is sort of a follow-on from what they'd been doing on the previous couple of albums. Although there's a couple of songs on here, Trash and Angel Eyes on the east side, I feel have a bit of a sort of a post-punk or even like a power pop vibe to them, which is quite unusual in the Roxy Music canon. But I really, really enjoy those songs. I think they're really good. So you have that sort of thing on side one, Manifesto, Still Falls the Rain. Stronger Through the Years, you still have a little bit of the old experimental Roxy kind of coming through in that song. And then on the west side, you have the move to the sort of suave, sophisticated, dancey sort of Roxy music. And the big hit song off this side was Dance Away. And they went for that style more as the later years went on. In fact, Trash, which is like a very sort of power poppy, post-punky kind of song on the east side, they completely re-recorded that in the more sort of dance style and released that as a single, and had a big hit with it as well. But on the west side, you've got, as well as Dance Away, you've got Ain't That So, My Little Girl, Cry, 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 and Spin Me Round. It's definitely an album where you can see the move sort of from one side of Roxy to the other. Fascinating album. Really good. My number 6 is probably going to be a lot higher in a lot of people's lists, and I get that. I love this album. It's just, I really like some of the other albums better. So, and this was the one that had a huge hit for them. This is Siren from 1975. Obviously the big hit off this was Love Is the Drug. Here in Australia, they didn't have a lot of hit singles, Roxy Music, but Love Is the Drug definitely was one that broke through here. And it was a massive hit in the UK for them, and I believe it was their only top 40 hit in the US. So this to me is Roxy Music's rock album. This really rocks harder, I think, than any other Roxy Music album. End of the Line is great. Sentimental Fool, I mean, it kind of sums up Brian's persona, doesn't it? Whirlwind is great. She Sells. Both Ends Burning. What a great track that is. Just incredible song, that one. And it ends with Just Another High, which again has that sort of, you know, the ennui of the sophisticate's life that Brian Ferry used to like to write about in his songs. Hello, Grace. Grace is here to join in again today. So that's my number 6. My number 5, I apologise in advance for anybody who's offended by the album cover, but it is what it is. It's Country Life from 1974. This album is sort of heading towards what Siren would be. It doesn't rock as hard as Siren does, but it's definitely sort of straightforward songs. You have like 5 tracks on each side. The Thrill of It All is a really good opener. I mean, they always had really good album openers, Roxy Music, too. You know, 3 and 9, All I Want Is You, really good stuff. And then on side 2, you've got Bittersweet, Triptych, A Really Good Time, Prairie Rose, really good songs. Definitely heading towards the sound that they would have on Siren, but not quite there yet. And still with little elements of the experimental side still to go. My number 4 is going to be their debut from 1972, simply titled Roxy Music. This sort of set a template for what their first couple of albums would be like. On side 1, you would have songs that were written in a fairly sort of traditional structure, sometimes even sort of old style rock and roll, but the arrangements would be would really subvert those sort of traditional song styles. And then on side 2 you would have more sort of experimental sort of music that, you know, used a lot more of Brian Eno's synths. The first 2 albums have Brian Eno on them. That's the inner cover. You can see the band there, definitely with that sort of glam look. Yeah, I mean, side 1, Remake Remodel, again, fabulous album opener. Ladytron's really good. Is there something? If there is something, rather. 2HB, their tribute to Humphrey Bogart. Then you get The Bob, which is based on the film Battle of Britain. Chance Meeting, Would You Believe, Sea Breezes, Bitter End. Really, really good stuff. Produced by Peter Sinfield, who had just recently left King Crimson at this stage. Wonderful debut album. Really, really good stuff. My number 3 is going to be their final album from 1982, and that is Avalon. Now, this is just the epitome of that later era, sophisticated, suave, smooth sound. But there's a bit of a darker hue to this than there is on, say, Flesh and Blood. And it's an intoxicating combination, and I absolutely adore this album. It is a beautiful album to listen to. More than this, one of my favourite Roxy Music singles, and one pretty much their only other hit here in Australia, apart from their cover of Jealous Guy, which went to number 1. But yeah, I mean, the space between Avalon, the title track, is so gorgeous. India is sort of instrumental, and then While My Heart's Still Beating. Then on side 2 you've got the main thing, Take a Chance with Me, really good song, To Turn You On. And then it finishes with Tara, which another is just sort of keyboard and sax instrumental from Brian Ferry and Andy Mackay, and it's just a gorgeous way to end the album. Really, really love Avalon. Now we're getting into the top 2, and my number 2 is some people's number 1, and I get that. It's Brian Eno's favourite Roxy Music album, even though he didn't appear on it, and that is Stranded from 1973. Yeah, I mean, just an incredible album. This is the first one with Eddie Jobson, and you definitely, like, again, incredible album opener with Street Life, which was also a single. And you get, like, Eddie Jobson doing a bit of the Brian Eno synth treatment stuff on that song. Just Like You, Amazona is a great song. Psalm, really, really sort of long experimental piece. Really love that. And then on side 2 you've got Serenade, you've got A Song for Europe, which is like an epic, epic track. Mother of Pearl is beautiful, and Sunset. Just really great. They're slightly going into more sort of song-based pieces here, but not losing that experimental edge, and I really, really like that. But my number 1 Roxy Music album has been my favourite for a long, long time. It's their second album. It's also released in 1973, and that is For Your Pleasure. Again, look at that sort of glam look that the band had in those early days. Just an incredible album. Again, like the debut album, you have side 1 where you have sort of the more traditional song structures but subverted with strange arrangements, and then on side 2 you have much more sort of moody experimental pieces. Starts off on side one with probably their greatest album opener and maybe my favourite Roxy Music song of all time, Do the Strand. What a fabulous song. Oh goodness, I love that song. Beauty Queen's really great, Strictly Confidential, Editions of You. Just wonderful song. And then In Every Dream Home a Heartache. Sort of this weird, creepy song about an inflatable doll. So just a strange, wonderful song. Then on side two, you've got The Bogus Man, which is an extended piece. Has a real sort of Krautrock feel to it, that one. You have Grey Lagoons. It's a shorter song, but it's a really good. And then you have the title track, For Your Pleasure. And Eno really goes nuts with his treatments and so on that song. Absolutely incredible album, start to finish. My favourite Roxy Music album. So that's my Roxy Music ranking. To go through it again from top to bottom, at number 1 we have For Your Pleasure. At number 2, Stranded. At number 3, Avalon. At number 4, Roxy Music, the debut. At number 5, Country Life. At number 6, Siren. At number 7, Manifesto. And at number 8, still a fabulous album, Flesh and Blood. So that's my Roxy Music ranking. I'd love to know in the comments below what your Roxy Music ranking is, if you'd like to rank all 8 of them, or if you just want to give me a top 5. Let me know your favourite. Let me know in the comments where you think I got it right, where you think I got it wrong. Remember, these are just my opinions. I don't pretend to be the all-out expert on Roxy Music, or indeed any of the bands I talk about. But these are just my personal opinions of how I like these albums. Let me know in the comments how you like them and where you think I might have got it right or got it wrong. You know, if Flesh and Blood's your favourite, let me know why. I'd really love to know. I love reading people's different perspectives on these albums, and sometimes it makes me listen to these albums in a different way. So it's really, really great. Please like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far. I couldn't do this without you. If you want to help the channel out, I am still running my GoFundMe at the moment. I'm trying to raise money so that I can get Zoom Professional and have guests on the channel. I do have a very specific show, or a series of shows, that I want to do with other people involved in the show. So if you'd like to see that come to fruition, I can't really tell you more about it at this stage. Hopefully at the end of the month I can reveal all about what that program's going to be like. But if you'd like to help see that program come to fruition, please, if you can send me a few dollars in GoFundMe, it really, really would help out. I'll leave a link in the description down below. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have a ton of other Studio Albums Ranked shows. They're all in a playlist. So you can just go to the playlist section on the channel and find the playlist for the Studio Albums Ranked shows and have a look through there. Also for my favourite albums of all time, for my anniversary albums, for my In Defense Of, for my reviews and so on and so on. There are playlists for all of those. So please, if you are new to the channel, go and have a look at some of my other videos. That would also really, really help the channel out as well. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, I'm mostly posting the records I happen to be listening to at the time, as well as posting channel updates. On Twitter, you can see my terrible Wordle scores. I do talk about anything and everything on Twitter, but I am trying to give that more of a music focus. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.